Welcome to week 9 of Wake Up Productive. We've now completed 2 complete 4-week segments, and ideally by now you've implemented and are habitually using the personal success ritual in the morning and then the 60-60-30 solution at work. These next 4 weeks we're going to be talking about what I call the higher game of productivity. We're going to be both zooming out and zooming in and integrating all the different tools that we've learned to create a rock solid base to keep you getting more and more productive as your life goes on. Over these next 4 weeks, we're going to be talking about concepts like alignment, which means aligning your values, your beliefs, your actions, skills, relationships, your physical, your logical, emotional, getting them all aligned and going in the same direction so that you don't have so much friction, you don't have so much conflict that gets in the way and holds you back, right? Aligning everything creates a very powerful framework that allows you to create massive productivity. We're going to go deeper into the concept of renewal, and we're going to learn about how to support ourselves at the deepest levels so that we have maximum energy, maximum focus, maximum long-term sustainability, which actually leads me to the next and most important part probably of this whole program, which is the concept of sustainability. The idea that there's a way to balance our input and our output, balance renewal and exertion, and balance learning and doing in a way that makes us become more stronger, more productive, and more fulfilled over the long term. So that's what we've got to look forward to over the coming few weeks. And let's get ready and let's dive into this week's material. So this week we're specifically going to talk about 3 very important concepts for setting up a context or an environment in the inner world and in the outer world that allows us to be most productive and most successful. The 3 concepts that we're going to talk about are what I call inevitability thinking. All right, you hear me mention this one a lot in a lot of different types of training that I do, and we're going to talk about it specifically within the context of time management and personal productivity here. Next, we're going to talk about seeing and creating your ideal day from start to finish, making all of the ideal pieces and then fitting them together in the ideal format so that it creates a day that sustains you, that energizes you, and that motivates you. And then finally, we're going to talk about setting up your ideal environment for productivity. And this is about literally setting up your surroundings so that you can be most productive. So let's start with inevitability thinking. Let me go over what I mean by inevitability thinking. You may have heard me talk about this before, but it's really important that this sinks deep into your mind, because this is one of the most important concepts that I've ever discovered in all of the studying, all of the research, all of the testing, all of the implementing that I've done. It's one of the most important concepts for creating long-term success. Inevitability thinking is what I think of as the next evolution of goal setting and achievement. Now let's talk about the paradigms that have come before inevitability thinking and how those work and how they also then support inevitability thinking. So before inevitability thinking, we had goal setting. All right, and goal setting is a standard model where you figure out the outcome that you want to have happen, and then you get really clear on it, and then you figure out what steps you need to take in order to have that goal happen. Now there are some rules of thumb or some general principles in goal setting that make it work much better. Things like imagining your outcome as being positive, not negative. So you want to achieve this, not you want to avoid this. Another thing is to create an affirmation around your goal as if you've already achieved it, and say the affirmation to yourself every day. So if your goal is to get a new Mercedes automobile, instead of saying, I want to stop driving my old Chevy and, I'd love to have a Mercedes, what you do is you create an affirmation that says, I own a new Mercedes sedan. I own a new Mercedes sedan. I own a new Mercedes sedan. And what happens is when you say that over and over inside your mind, it goes into your subconscious, and your subconscious mind says, now wait a minute, I don't own a new Mercedes, and it creates a tension and it pulls you more toward that goal or that outcome that you want. So this is a very interesting aspect of cognitive dissonance and just how your mind works, that when you create a clear picture of something that you want to have happen and you affirm it over and over and over, you just go to work on figuring out how to make it happen, right? You've heard me refer to the mind as the Google for goals. Well, this is how that works when you're setting goals. Now, a guy named Bob Beale came along maybe 10 years ago or so, and he wrote a book called Stop Setting Goals If You'd Rather Solve Problems. And what Bob Beale figured out is that a lot of people would rather solve problems than set goals. They'd rather figure out a list of problems that they need to solve to get the outcome they want, and then go to work solving those problems than to imagine a different future. And what he figured out is that a lot of people, 80% or so, would really rather go to work creating the list of problems to solve and then go to work solving those problems. So you might just notice as I was saying this, which one would you prefer? Do you prefer goal setting? Do you prefer problem solving? Do you prefer a little bit of each? I think it's actually important to develop both muscles. So to use both goal setting and problem solving, because when you use them together, they really enhance each other. So those were kind of the old paradigms, I think, of achievement and of reaching and creating outcomes that you want to have. Goal setting and problem solving. And again, both very useful. But inevitability thinking is something very different. Inevitability thinking goes to work on what I consider to be the root causes, the real creators of achievement. And what inevitability thinking about is creating the conditions that make it so success is inevitable. So let me say that again. Inevitability thinking is about creating the conditions so that success becomes inevitable. In other words, setting things up so that the outcome you want to have happen happens on its own. Let me give you a couple of examples of how you might use inevitability thinking to make it so the outcome that you want to have happen happens automatically. You remember earlier in the program when I mentioned that when I started drinking water every morning when I first woke up, I had to do something to remind myself to drink the water. And so what I would do is take a half liter of water and I would put it on my bathroom sink. So when I first woke up and I walked into the bathroom, I would see it there and I would say, oh yeah, I've got to drink some water. Now, you might just think, oh, that's kind of a reminder that you're putting in front of yourself, but there's a lot more to it, right? I'm trying to ask myself, how do I make it impossible to not do the thing I want to do? How do I make it so that the outcome I want couldn't not happen? Let's say that you want to start going to the gym every day and you need to figure out a way to get there. Well, you could set a goal to go to the gym every day, and you could even plan it all the way out, and you might even figure out some of the problems you have to solve, the distractions and things that you have to move out of the way, and how you're going to get there, and how you're going to get back, and how you're going to move things around to accommodate it. But then there's actually getting yourself to go do it every day when the moment comes. Well, one thing you might do is find an accountability partner who picks you up every day and drives you to the gym. Or you might even trade off so that you know that every day at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, outside is going to be your accountability partner in their car waiting for you and expecting you to go. And maybe even on alternate days, they're going to expect you to show up at their house and be waiting because you've given them your word. This is much closer to what I'm talking about now around inevitability thinking. Another example that I talk about a lot is when I create a product. Typically, the way I create products is that I do it in front of kind of a live studio audience at a live seminar. And because, generally speaking, it's kind of hard to get myself to do a long-term project that requires one day after another of a lot of focused work, what I do to make it inevitable that I'll get that product done is I set a date for when I'm going to do the live program. And then I make an outline of what I want to teach there. And then I write the sales letter for the product. And then I actually go sell it. And I tell people that they're going to need to come and spend 3 days with me to learn all this stuff. Now, I may have my outline. I may have my good intentions. I may really want to create this product. But without that, that date, knowing that there are going to be 100 people or 500 people or however many people are going to be there waiting for me that have come in, several from other countries, there's a good chance that I might not get it done. But I'll tell you what, to this day, after years of doing this, I have never not gotten the product done when I know the people are going to show up. So this is a great example of how I use this in my own life and how I've gotten dozens of products created because I've set the conditions up to make it so that it can't not happen, so that it's inevitable. So you might start thinking right now, because we're going to do an exercise in a little bit, you might just start your unconscious mind thinking, how can you set up conditions in your life to make the outcomes that you want physically, emotionally, and logically, both in your personal life and in your work life, inevitable. The next thing that we're going to do here as an exercise is we're going to create and see our ideal day. Now, over the past 8 weeks, and even in the week or so when we were getting started, we were learning tools, we were learning about building blocks, and we've started putting some of these together. And now that you have an experience of doing your personal success ritual every single day, and it's becoming rhythmic and it's just integrating itself into your life, it would be more abnormal to not do it now than to do it. And because you've been doing 60-60-30s at work, and if you have, then you've been seeing just the incredible power that they'll give you. What we're going to do now is talk about chunking these different pieces into an ideal formulaic day that actually creates the most energy, the most productivity, right? Just optimizes all of it. Now, this is something that I've actually done for years, and I do it on and off, and I'd say that, probably every few months or so, on average, I come back and I do this exercise. And here's what I do. I start out and I just throw out everything that I'm doing right now. I try to start clean and fresh. And I ask myself, what is the name of the game in my life right now? Because as I develop and as I change, I have new levels I want to go to. I've accomplished things, and now it's time to go accomplish something at the next level. I've learned a new skill that I wanted to learn, and now I have to reassess and decide, is that something I want to keep developing? Did I learn it to the point that's just fine now, and now it's time to go learn a new one? We're always becoming a new person, and we can even take that to the next level if we keep figuring out how to design the ideal day. So what I do is I say, okay, starting with a blank slate, what would create the most kind of results on a daily basis to the big picture that I'm trying to achieve? So I try to get that big picture outcome in my mind. I try to look at my life mission here. I try to say, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish over the next 20 years or over the next 50 years? Not just, what am I trying to get done next week? And when I ask myself, what am I trying to get done over the next 20 years or 50 years, it really allows me to zoom out and see which things that I'm doing are supporting my bigger vision, my bigger goals, my values, and so forth, and which things are not. And then I kind of zoom in a little bit and I say, okay, now what am I really trying to accomplish, in my work and in my personal life that are over the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months? What are the kind of medium-term goals? What are my fitness goals? What are my goals developing? What are my goals trying to get new knowledge, new skills? What are some of my emotional outcomes that I would like to achieve? And I really try to get in touch with the bigger picture, where I'm trying to go, the new me that I'm trying to create for myself, the new reality that I'm trying to live into in the future. Again, leaving behind everything that I've done, leaving behind what I'm doing right now. And then I say, okay, what kind of a day would support creating those bigger picture things that I want? What would I do in the morning? What would I do next? What would I do after that? Who would be the people that I would meet with on a regular basis? Who are some of the new people even that I'd like to meet with on a regular basis? In other words, using inevitability thinking in this mindset to set up conditions so that it forces me to the next level. And once I've done that and I've kind of conceptualized, sometimes I'll just lay down on my bed and I'll think about it for a while, or I'll run a bath and take a bath, or think about it in the shower, or I'll go for a walk, or I'll go to the spa and get a massage, and I'll just try and really zoom out and think about all of these different factors. I kind of think of it like a giant puzzle where every couple or few months I take the old puzzle and all the old pieces that I was putting together and I kind of throw them away and I say, okay, what could a new puzzle look like? What are all the pieces that I have to work with right now? What are some of the new pieces that I've learned about that I didn't know about before that I could add to my puzzle? How could I assemble those in a new way? You see, I found that by creating my ideal day and organizing it and trying to really see how all the pieces could fit together and how I could create new rituals and a new combination so that the whole day flows from one to the next, that this actually leads to almost like thinking about creating a super ritual that's the entire day, right? It's a massive productivity ritual where I go through phases of renewing myself and of working on my mind and my body and my emotions on the inside, and phases where I go through outer productivity, and phases where I go through interacting with other folks. And I say, okay, how does the new level of fitting all that together work? Okay, good. So tuck that into the back of your mind, because that's the second thing we're going to work on, and we're going to do an exercise for that at the end of this session as well. And now let's talk about the third new concept that we want to learn about. What we're going to talk about now is setting up your physical environment for maximum creativity and maximum productivity. Maximum creativity and productivity. As you've probably seen, there are a lot of books that have been written, seminars that are given, and other ideas about creativity and creative thinking. And even though a lot's been kind of taught and talked about in terms of creativity, nobody can really describe what it is. And I don't think that I'm necessarily the best at describing what it is, but I'm going to take a shot at it. I think creativity is when you're in that optimal state of body, emotion, and mind, where you feel optimistic, you feel energetic, and you feel like you can create something. Does that make sense? You feel like you can create something new. Now, that might be taking something that already exists and just developing it a little bit further. It might be optimizing a system to change it a little bit to make it work a little bit better. It might be creating something completely new that you just made up in your mind and now you're going to make in physical reality. But it's that state where you feel really good and where you feel like you can make something new, you can create something that has a lot of value. Now, I think that everyone is capable of creativity, and I think that everyone is capable of massive creativity. It turns out that some people like to optimize things. Some people like to take things that already exist and they like to tune and tweak them and refine them and make the little nuts and bolt kind of tightenings and optimizations to make it work just a little bit better. Some people like to create completely new systems from scratch. Some people can visualize and make entire systems work in their heads. Nikola Tesla was famous for being able to build a machine in his head and then run it and see how all the gears worked and how all the parts and how the electricity flowed. And he could even predict which parts were going to wear out before others because he could run it in his head for like years. That's kind of a rare talent. Not a lot of people have that one. But if that's the one that you have and that's how you're creative, fantastic. Some people, like you might find in the typically the accounting and legal department inside of businesses, they are much better at looking at a system that's kind of working and figuring out how to lock and tune it and cover up some of the holes and make it so that it's a little bit less risky. And what they do oftentimes is very creative work, even though to the person who's imagining brand new things, it's not necessarily creative. But the point that I'm trying to make is that you can be very, very creative. You can be incredibly creative. And what we want to do is we want to set up an environment that inspires you to be creative. Now, we've also been talking a lot about productivity here. And productivity to me means getting results in the real world. You've heard the word innovation used a lot in business over the last 10 or 20 years. It's become, all the buzzword. And a lot of people think innovation is creating something new. And I don't really think that. I think that innovation is creating something that's relatively new, but that customers perceive to be better. Customers perceive to be more useful. And in business, as an example, a lot of productivity, in my opinion, is creating things that are innovative, in other words, that are a little bit better, a little more evolved, or maybe even revolutionary, and then getting them into the hands of people so that the people can get the value from it. And obviously, if it's a good innovation and they hear about it, they're probably going to want to invest in it. They're probably going to want to buy it. And so, in a business sense, I think of productivity, about getting great results. Peter Drucker said that business is marketing and innovation. And so to me, business productivity is about doing just that, innovating, creating new things that people want to use, and then marketing them so that they get into the hands of your customers. So that might be, one way of looking at productivity and getting results in the real world. So the question I have for you is, how can you create a physical environment, your actual surroundings, that contribute to massive creativity and massive productivity? And just think about that for a moment, and we're going to actually do an exercise here in just a moment. Okay, so let's do a set of exercises around inevitability thinking, imagining your ideal day, and then setting up your physical environment for maximum creativity and productivity. First, inevitability thinking. I'd like you to zoom out for a moment and think about the big picture of your life. Where do you want to be in 20 years, 50 years? You might even do the exercise of imagining that you're at your own funeral and you're up there in the casket and everyone's standing around and remembering you. What do you want to achieve in the big picture of your life? What's the outcome that you want to achieve? Next, let's zoom down another level. Where do you want to be in a year? What's the 1 year outcome that's realistic? As an example, a lot of people in business, they shoot to double their business within a year. And that's usually a pretty good stretch goal, right? Not a lot of businesses can grow and double inside of a year. So maybe it's doubling inside of a year inside of your business. Maybe it's cultivating a really strong relationship with someone in your life that is very important to you. Where do you want to be in a year? And then where do you want to be in 90 days? What do you want to have accomplished, and what results do you want to see in 90 days? Okay, and from those 3 vantage points, now look at your life and ask yourself, what is the one highest leverage thing that you could start doing immediately to achieve those different levels? What's one thing that you could start doing right now that would make it inevitable that you reach your 90-day goal, inevitable that you reach your 1 year outcome, and inevitable that when you wake up in 20 years or 50 years or at the end of your life, that you look back and you say, there it was, I got it done, I got the job done, I contributed my greatest value, right? I didn't die with my music inside me. What's that one thing you could start doing right now? And then here's the important question. What condition would you need to set up to make it so that you doing that thing is inevitable, so that you doing that thing absolutely happens? Now, I mentioned earlier you might try accountability. Okay, you might try putting a penalty in place in case you don't do this thing. What I've found that's been very valuable is setting up a mastermind group, getting together a group of other people who are also committed to their goals, and then sharing publicly and telling them what you're trying to accomplish and when and what you're committed to doing on a regular basis. It might be something completely off the wall, right? It might be joining a group like Toastmasters, where you have to show up every week and do something. It might be hiring a personal coach to keep you on track. It might be something that you haven't thought of, or that's way outside the box. You might even want to brainstorm with other people about it. The point is that when you're in that insightful state of mind where you can see how everything works, where you've got some awareness, remember, you can see what you need to do. So what I'd like you to do now is choose that one condition that you can put in place to make your outcome inevitable, or as close to inevitable as possible. And then how can you set it up so that that condition is in place as fast as possible? So go ahead and pause the video and make some notes, write down that condition that you'd like to put in place, and then the action step of how you're going to put that condition in place so that it forces you to create the outcome that you want. And now let's design your ideal day. You're going to want to get a blank piece of paper out so that you can scribble on it and make a bunch of notes. And we're going to zoom out. Okay, so now you're doing your personal success ritual every morning. I hope you're doing it every single morning. And hopefully you've also been taking great renewal breaks where you're renewing yourself, you're getting your groove back, you're taking the energy break so you have a little bit of downtime, you're relaxing. So hopefully you can see how all of these fit together, making yourself strong first when you come into work, focusing on your highest leverage activity, taking the break so that you feel the energy to keep coming back. So now that we have the context, now that we have kind of the bigger pieces, I'd like to ask you, what would an ideal day look like for you? What would an ideal day look like? And you might start bringing in other pieces that didn't exist before. Maybe you've got a hobby that you should be doing every day because it just brings you a lot of enjoyment. Maybe there's a member of your family that you should be spending time with every day, or a friend you should be talking to or hanging out with. Maybe there's a particular person or group of people that you want to cultivate a relationship with, and you should be cultivating that relationship every day, or maybe you've got 10 people that you want to cultivate a relationship with and get into a mastermind, and you've decided, you know what, if I talk to every one of the 10 people over 2 weeks, that means I can talk to 5 a week. So Monday through Friday, I can have a 15-minute conversation with one of these 10 people every day, and then I'll have a personal relationship with them. And you know what, I should do that first thing when I come into work every day, because that will really get me fired up. It'll be the best focus I could possibly do. These people are going to help me grow my business. Maybe that's the way it looks. The question is, what are all the different puzzle pieces that you could put in place? A couple of keys here to kind of keep in mind. On the inner game stuff, your personal inner game, try to fit something physical, something emotional, and something logical. In other words, some kind of physical exercise or movement that gets your heart rate up and gets your body moving. Remember, it balances itself when it's moving. Something emotional, where you connect with another human being, where you talk to somebody, where you talk about what you did that day, you complain if you need to complain, you celebrate if you need to celebrate, you act as a support to them, you rejoice in the relationship, you really enjoy it. So something emotional, and then something logical. So you need to educate yourself. Maybe there's a time every day where you're going to read or listen to an audio program, or maybe even teach and mentor, because you learn much better when you teach. So you want to get all three of those, the physical, logical, and emotional, on the inner game. And then on the outer game, and maybe in more of a work context, you got to remember to set up time and situation so that you can be focused on your highest leverage activities. And in most businesses, marketing and innovation are those activities. So when you first come into work and you first kind of start your day, focusing those uninterrupted chunks of time on the things that get you the most results, right, will yield the most long-term leverage. So you might consider, right now, as of today, what are the things that bring you the most new customers? What are those channels or avenues? And are those the blocks that you want to put in your workday? And what leads to the most innovation? It might be creating new products, it might be creating new marketing, it might be creating something innovative where you're doing joint ventures with other people. I don't know what it is inside of your business, but what is that innovative activity that you do? So now that you've got all these, what I'd like you to do is take them out of your head and write them down on paper, almost like you're putting puzzle pieces to your own puzzle on the paper. What are all the elements that will bring you the most joy, that will develop you and grow you the most from the inside out, and that will also create the most results in your life and inside your business? And then once you've written them all down, see if you can fit them together like a puzzle, ideally putting them together one after another and trying to honor your mind, your body, your emotion, and the natural flow that they're going to go through. So what I've found is it's often very valuable to put an intellectual thing next to an emotional thing, next to a physical thing. So you're not just doing like all physical stuff and then all emotional stuff and then all logical stuff. See, these things are synergistic and they work together. As an example, when I first wake up in the morning and I'm doing my personal success ritual, I'm doing physical stuff, but then I'm also reading in the morning, so I'm doing something intellectual, and then throughout the day, I try to make sure at least once throughout the day to talk to somebody who's going to be a cool, fun, inspiring, intelligent person who's going to get me emotionally fired up. and I try to fit all these things together throughout the day. Try to, create a little bit of a flow for yourself and then implement it and see how well it works. Take these little mini chunk rituals that you've now learned and put them back to back. And don't get too freaked out if you try it one day and it doesn't work out, because when you put a bunch of rituals together, in effect, you're creating a new ritual, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time, effort, energy to fit it together. Leave a little bit of extra space between the transitions, create on-ramps and off-ramps, and don't be too hard on yourself as you're learning. And just keep coming back to this and tweaking and tuning your ideal day. And I think that what you'll find is if you keep revisiting this exercise every 90 days or so, and keep redesigning your ideal day, this will pull you up to the next level faster than just about anything else you can do. Now let's talk about setting up your ideal environment for creativity and productivity. This is a very interesting challenge because there are a lot of factors at work. But I just want to start off by encouraging you that by setting up your ideal environment for creativity and productivity, you can increase your feeling of inspiration, your feeling of engagement, your anticipation, right? You're looking forward to getting things done, and then when you're there, to staying focused and to really putting one foot in front of the other to create amazing results. You can increase that whole thing dramatically if you create a great environment. So your environment comes down to a few factors. Number one, your physical environment where you put yourself most of the time. So, do you work at a desk? If you do you stand or do you sit? I really recommend that you practice standing while you're doing your work. It does a lot of stuff. I mean, when you're standing up, it's better for your back. It engages more of your muscles. It allows your whole body to stay straight, and for your system, your whole upper thing up here to kind of hang from your spinal cord, which is the way that it's meant to happen. I've heard a lot of people say, I'm no doctor or expert in this field, but that the chair has been the worst thing for our backs that's ever been developed. So you might try this, and you have to kind of work your way up to it. I'm actually standing at a table here that is, I've got another one that you can't see that's right off camera here that I have my computer on, and I stand at one of these tables like this when I work. So you might try that. If you're not going to stand, you might figure out the best chair to sit in possible while you're sitting down. And you're going to want to do some research on this to find out what the most ergonomic chair is that stresses your body the least. I have a couple of friends that are using these new chairs that it looks like a bar stool that's mounted on a spring, and it actually swivels so that when you sit down, it forces you to keep your spine straight. Some people have found that sitting on one of those exercise balls, those big inflatable, red or blue balls, they sit on that, and that also forces their body to stay straight, and it builds up their abdominal tone. So wherever you're going to sit or stand, very important. Oh, quick little tip. If you're going to stand and work, you might want to buy one of those memory foam pillows that people use to sleep on typically, or you can get them in a seat cushion size, and put that on the floor where you stand, because it'll allow your feet to kind of mold to it, and it can really take a lot of strain and help distribute the balance of your feet. It's also important to practice how you stand. All right, I practice balancing my weight from one foot to the other until I'm kind of even, and then I say, okay, now I'm probably aligned. One of my good friends was telling me that most people, when they stand, they don't realize it, but they can be as much as 50 pounds off balance. So they can have as much as 50 more pounds resting on one side or the other. To show yourself this, next time you're at the kitchen and bathroom store, see if they've got scales there, and put one under each foot, and you'll see it'll blow your mind. So practice standing up straight. You want to get the ergonomics right so that you're aligned when you're working. So wherever you're going to stand or wherever you're going to sit, make sure that whatever's supporting you is going to hold you in the ideal posture. And then, of course, work on your posture and so forth. So why do I harp on this so much? Because if you're not holding your body in the ideal kind of posture and position, you're going to be wasting a tremendous amount of energy, and you're going to be fatiguing yourself. So right there, it's going to rob you of a lot. The next thing to consider, if you're working at a computer, is the ergonomics or the ease of use of the computer. I've found that using wrist rests, I even have these little gloves that I use now that I put on that have a little wrist rest built into them. I found that those work really well. I've tried a million different things, but those really work for me. And that has helped, it relaxes me. Wherever I put my wrists on the mouse or the keyboard, it just kind of works better. Figure out how to get your computer set up so that it's not stressful for your wrists and your hands. And if you have any kind of repetitive strain disorder, read about it and learn how to work on it. Start stretching your hands every day and your wrists. If you need to, go to an expert and learn about this. Very important that you get all of those little pieces set up. Your computer monitor is very important. I now use these 30-inch Apple monitors, which they're kind of expensive, but I found that having all that space is, it's just amazing in terms of my productivity. If you don't want to invest all that money in one of those, you can buy two smaller monitors that'll give you, about the same room for, literally under $500. You can probably get two monitors and the video card that'll drive them, which in this day and age, it's almost a necessity to have more desk space. You can have your email window open over here, and then you can have what you're working on over here. If you're, during your periods of what I call enlightened multitasking, where you need to be doing things and answering emails and on telephone calls. You're talking to somebody and you need to shoot them over a file, and you got to do it while you're on there. Or let's say that you're working and you're just kind of in productivity time. A lot of times you'll need a web browser open because you're doing research, and then you're finding something and you need to type it up and put it into whatever the document is you're creating or the book that you're writing. Or maybe you're doing some kind of video conference and you've got to have the video window open over here and the thing that you're showing over here. Two monitors is becoming almost a necessity for high productivity. Next, how do you make yourself distraction and interruption proof in your environment? This might involve things like getting a phone that you can turn off easily, or setting your phone up so that you can unplug it easily, or it might even involve putting the phone in a separate room so that you can't hear it when you're on focus time. You got to get creative here, but you got to ask yourself, how do I make myself distraction proof and interruption proof? One of the no-brainers is to just turn off your email client when you're not using it, and definitely get rid of any kind of alerts, right? Audio alerts or video alerts or pop-ups that let you know you have a new email. That stuff is robbing us of our ability to focus. So take a blank piece of paper right now, and I'd like you to write down a list of things that you need to do that you know right now would create your optimal environment for creativity and productivity. Do that and then come back in a sec and we'll do our last exercise. Okay, so finally, take a blank piece of paper and I'd like you to write down the things that you need to do to create your optimal environment of creativity and productivity, particularly focusing on where it is that you sit or stand when you work, the actual equipment that you're using as you're working, and I used a computer as an example, making it so that it's really easy and comfortable to mouse and to type, and also maybe setting up two monitors so that you have kind of optimal space to work in, and also focusing on distraction proofing and interruption proofing yourself. Whatever you have to do, how do you make it so that it's almost impossible for you to be distracted or interrupted? And once you've made that list, then figure out the action steps and go to work building your ideal work environment so that you can get the most done. Because our environment affects us so much, and you really do deserve and owe it to yourself to create one that makes you really productive. Okay, good. So get to work on that stuff and come back next week, because we're coming into some of the most important concepts that you can possibly learn about becoming very productive and managing your time well. All right, talk to you again soon.